Welcome to Headline Automotive News Podcast. I'm Rob Lofaris. Today is Tuesday, July 12th, 2022. In this week's podcast, we'll discuss the new norms of retail, specifically the way things used to be that will not likely return anytime soon. Back in the 1980s, Peter Schultz became the first automotive executive to be president and CEO of Porsche. Being domestic to the North American market, Peter knew selling cars in the United States was totally different than that of Europe. But after a few short months, he started questioning the unthinkable. Why do we have dealers, and why do we have a pipeline of unsold inventory? Peter tried to buy its dealers, and he tried to build cars to order, and then he was fired. Since the 1980s, European auto executives in particular have always looked at the American dealer market as being somewhat wacky. Dealerships holding a 60-plus day supply of unsold stock, dealership facilities built on acres and acres of land, mostly to park these unsold cars, dealerships needing factory floor plan assistance, advertising dollars, and factory incentives to close deals. And every month, the factory calls on its dealers to take more and more cars. However, every CEO also knows that this 60-plus day supply of new cars represents hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. And to make it even more attractive, the factory invoices their dealers for these cars weeks before they arrive. A big pipeline of unsold cars represents a lot of cash flow. Reduce or eliminate this pipeline in any one sweep, and it's a guaranteed disaster financially to both the brand and shareholder value, not to mention what this would do to supplier contracts at the assembly line. So it's fair to say that any US-based CEO that would suggest such a reduction in car inventory would eventually be run out of town by its dealers. However, back in the 1950s, somewhere through the mid-1970s, order to production was a common practice with US car manufacturers. And it worked like this. Customer came into the dealership, he sat down with the salesperson, he checked all the boxes of models and colors and options to customize his car to the exact liking. He went home with a buyer's order, and he told all his friends at work he ordered a car, then waited 6 to 8 weeks to take delivery. Fast forward to the 1990s to present times, rather than throttle the production of cars to market demand and help reduce the cost of doing business, manufacturers increase dealership expenses by focusing on facility and brand standards, some of them on their fifth generation of logo signs and outdoor colors. To hang in there with the brand, dealers were asked to comply with new franchise standards and forced to spend millions of dollars on the then current CEO's new brand design elements, which almost always included an 8 to 10 car showroom with property footprints large enough to hold at least 60-plus day supply of new cars. Since the 1990s, factories and dealerships have embraced the theory that bigger is indeed better. More facility size, more employees, more in selection of unsold cars, so dealers can spot deliver them to customers within 2 hours after walking into the showroom. Interesting to mention, with all this craziness, a company called J.D. Power decided to measure all this activity too, allowing the factory and the dealer to boast who is best, as long as they pay J.D. Power the licensing fee to do so. Big push on bigger facilities, big push on wholesaling more and more cars to the dealers, big consumer incentives each month, big push on increased market share, and a focus on CSI. With the exception of 2008 and 2010 bailouts, this has been the norm for the past 30 years or so. Then suddenly the party ended, and everyone went home. Empty facilities, empty pipeline, no push on wholesales, no dealer floor plan assistance, no customer incentives, no real talk about market share, and no care about CSI. And just like that, the car industry returned to its 1950s roots, with order-to-production pipelines, high margins, and freedom to do whatever it takes to survive. As a matter of fact, consumers are still paying market adjustment pricing over MSRP on new cars, some as high as $4,000 a copy. And guess what? The manufacturers are looking the other way. While the media and the industry is calling these COVID times a tragedy, very quietly, manufacturers are popping champagne bottles. Amazingly, new car gross profits have never been higher. Dealer profits have never been higher. There are no incentives to manage. New car transaction prices are over $40,000. Used cars are selling really well, and off-lease cars are killing it at the auctions. In fact, everyone is happy, maybe except the customer. For the first time in a long time, the factory dealer consumer business model is changed. Now maybe bigger isn't better. Maybe dealerships can be built smaller, especially in expensive metro areas. Maybe customers can wait for cars to be built. And maybe the push on increased market share year after year was wasted efforts. And now CEOs are all concluding the unthinkable once again. Maybe we don't need dealers to sell cars anymore, just service them. I had thought once brands like Kia, Hyundai, Nissan, and Chrysler eventually got their hands on more computer chips, they'd get back to their old habits, and this COVID experiment would be just that. However, times are changing. I honestly think the days of big pipeline of unsold new cars is over, and so is the traditional showroom experience, and affordability too. The gloves are off. It's every man for himself. This is Rob Lowe. Thanks for listening.